Hello and welcome everyone to another in our Let's Talk Leadership Live conversations. This is coming to you from the UK, so it's sort of about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. Brit is joining us from Saudi Arabia, so it's probably about lunchtime with her. And I know we've got one or two friends watching in India, so it's probably mid-afternoon. But if you are watching, fantastic. If you see this later, then do let us have your comments. And we're delighted today because joining us are two young leaders from the UK, Sophie Ordish and Emma Nooney. And Sophie, I think, is either the first or second of the young leaders that we've been supporting. And Brit, who's also online today, has been coaching her for the last 12 months. And Emma joined us a few months ago, and I'll leave the two of them to introduce themselves. But Emma is being coached by Nicola, who can't join us today, but Jane is with us. So Jane is one of our regular LTL contributors. So it's lovely to see everyone. Thanks for coming on the call. And we're just going to spend a little bit of time exploring what it's been like for Emma and for Sophie in their respective roles, which they'll talk a little bit about. What it's been like having to work through the pandemic and face all of the challenges that they've had to face as young leaders in the UK. So anyway, if you've got any questions, you can add them to the chat and they'll appear on the stream at the bottom. And we look forward to hearing from you. So Sophie, can I ask you first of all, just sort of say a few words about what you do so that people watching this can understand the role that you play?
So I am the Quality Assurance Manager and Produce Manager at Fives Coventry. I manage about 3 teams in different departments for the business. And we import bananas from the tropics, and then we pack them in Coventry, and then we distribute them to retailers. So that is my general day-to-day. So I manage those people, I manage the quality controllers, and I manage the pineapple operations. And
we first met several years ago because you were on the postgraduate program at MDS, I think, which is where we first met. So, and then did you move into Fives, or were you somewhere else first? I can't remember.
So I did the MDS graduate scheme, and then I got a permanent position with Fives straight after as produce manager.
Great.
And then from there, I've been at Fives 3 years, and I was promoted to QC manager within a year, and then here we are now.
Great. And how many people are there in your in those 3 teams?
There's about 30 people.
Yeah, great. So it's been pretty full on. Anyway, we'll hear a bit about that in the moment. But thanks. And Emma, how about you? Because you're in a completely different sort of world, aren't you?
Yeah. So I work at the Mill Art Centre in Banbury. The Mill Art Centre is it's a charity, and it's a mixed arts venue. So we do a bit of everything in our programme, including live events, participation, film and exhibitions. So my role is I'm the programme manager. So I oversee basically all of the artistic events that we do in the building, which compromises of all those things: live events, film, exhibition, creative learning, and as well as looking at our outreach programme. And I work really closely with our artistic director and executive director on projects and fundraising bids and strategic development plans as well.
Great. And so you must have faced, given that no one's been able to enter a live venue, certainly in the UK, for about 12 months, or certainly on and off for 12 months. So how's it been for you?
Sort of all over the place. So I started my role as the program manager back in January 2020. So I didn't have long to sort of sink my teeth into this role until the pandemic hit. So just before the pandemic hit, I had signed off my first summer season, and then it kind of felt like with the pandemic coming, it threw it all in the air again after I'd had it all done. I think for us, the most difficult thing that's been to manage and navigate is the uncertainty around everything. There were a lot of reschedules, which all venue programmers will tell you. A lot of our upcoming season, that's after hopefully with restrictions being lifted, is due to go ahead. A lot of that are reschedules that's booked in. Yeah, so that's been quite difficult to navigate. But being a mixed arts venue, we've had lots of different avenues to be able to explore. So whereas a lot of theatres are still closed, because our creative learning programme falls under the umbrella of education, we were actually able to reconvene with face-to-face learning from September last year when we weren't in lockdown. So we've been looking at and adapting very cautiously, but we've been lucky enough to be able to continue with parts of our programme, film as well for a short period of time. We were one of the lucky venues who could actually go ahead with a family Christmas show as well last year, with social distancing and a live stream option as well. So it's you're always running, it feels like. You're always just trying to keep an eye on the updates and adapt where you can. Forward planning is really hard, but we're getting there.
Yeah. And Sophie, it must have been, if you've got 30 people in your team, were all of them able to work right the way through, or did you have to sort of manage with fewer people, or were there issues around supply of the products that you look after? It must have all been very challenging in your situation.
Yeah, for us it was business as normal, so we set up a one-way system, and then it was really the health and safety to get that straight with all screens. If anything, it has just got busier and busier for us because, as you know, people in the UK panic bought fruit and vegetables and all supplies, so our orders just went through the roof. So it's just been non-stop. It's actually slowed down a little bit, which is nice, from being manic for a good year. But no, everyone was still able to work. So that was good.
Yeah, so you did. I mean, because we've heard stories in other parts of the world where workforces have either been decimated because of illness through COVID, and therefore half of them haven't turned up, and leaders have had to try and organise. But you've been able to manage it all the way through. Yeah,
and I think that's one of the biggest things that I've been able to learn over the last year is I've had to make some big decisions which I probably wouldn't have done had the pandemic not happened, and I've been more responsible and accountable for those bigger decisions that impacted the whole business.
And how have you felt about that?
Oh, well, it's a good experience, isn't it? So I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed having more responsibility, and I think you just learn quicker as well in the year. Maybe something that might have taken 3 or 4 years to learn because of the situation. You've been thrown into those situations and be able to manage the risk and make those decisions.
Yeah. And Britt and Jane, in your experience, what have you noticed about some of the conversations you've been having with the people you coach or with the organisations you work with around, in a sense, the positives that have come out of the pandemic, or the agility or the flexibility that people have adopted?
Yeah, I think that people have definitely found, not just the young leaders, but leaders in general have found resources in themselves that they didn't think they had in terms of agility and resilience.
Yeah.
Up against it, they found there was some extra petrol in the tank, and definitely the learning that Sophie's referring to, I think, is going on at all levels of leadership as people are up against unprecedented challenges. Definitely, there's that positive angle.
Yeah. Britt, anything you've noticed?
Well, yes. Also, to build on that, and what Sophie also said, the opportunities open up that wouldn't have opened up as quickly, maybe when times were normal. But the learning curve has been very, very steep, for better or worse. And I think for a lot of people, actually, when it was positive, it was very positive because they did realize that they could do much more and much quicker than they thought they would be able to do. So certainly not only negative. Of course, for those of us who were lucky enough to keep our jobs and our livelihood, obviously.
Yeah. So Emma, what's been one of your personal sort of great successes? One of the things with all of this going on, and the fact you've sort of, by what you were saying earlier, you've sort of managed to get educational programs going and keep them going, and you did the Christmas show. What for you personally, as a young leader in your organisation, you're particularly proud of?
In terms of sort of what we've achieved in the last year, because the way we work, it is very much a team effort, but kind of similar to Sophie. A lot of our team have been furloughed, so there is not a lot of our team, but I've had to make sort of a lot of decisions that I wouldn't usually have to make. So in terms of adapting the program, I decided from January we'd launch a online creative learning program, which is far from what we usually do. For us, it's about being in a professional art studio. It's about working with that tutor face to face. But I decided, well, let's develop some courses to actually do online, specifically for online. And actually, we found really great success in doing that. And there was a really good uptake from doing that. And from that led to a partnership with Age UK, where we developed a project specifically for an online course, specifically for older people who have been hit by the pandemic in terms of being isolated at home, not going out and moving as much. We did a series of art and dance sessions, which went really well as well. And that's followed on to more online projects specifically for older people through dance, art and yoga. So that was sort of a decision, whereas usually that would be done as a team effort. I sort of had to go with my gut instinct and go with it and trust that it might be something that would work. And luckily it has been really successful in lots of ways. That's probably the biggest success so far from this year.
Great, and we should explain to people who might be watching this from other parts of the world that Age UK is a huge charity in the UK, isn't it? It covers an enormous range of services for older people.
Yeah.
And how about you, Sophie, then? So, you've been managing 30 people, you've got inundated with huge demand, and possibly there have been disruptions to supply on occasions from the other end, from where the product comes from. What's something that you've been really proud of in your own sort of learning and leadership?
I think it's trying to keep calm under the pressure, to be honest. There's been a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. And obviously leading from the front, you need to make sure you're calm so your team stays calm. It's been very worrying for people's personal lives. I mean, a lot of people have suffered with COVID. So It's trying to make the best of that and make sure everyone's still positive and happy and feel safe when they come to work. So I think pedaling really fast underneath, but trying to smile and just carry on.
Because you're located in Coventry, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, and that part of Warwickshire got hit quite badly with COVID in terms of the number of cases. Yeah. So how did you find? You must have had to spend some of your time, obviously, as you've said, making sure that your colleagues were well and they felt that you were sort of taking care of their interests.
Yes, absolutely. So that's just maintaining normal conversations with people and just understanding what's going on with them and if they needed any adjustments making. So if a member of their family was ill, then obviously there was a lot of processes in place with self-isolation, returning to work. And we have to remember that the government guidelines have changed continuously throughout. So we've always had to be up to date with what we should be doing, the policies, and then following those and then making the changes in the business to make sure we're doing the right thing for ourselves and for the people. Yeah.
And Jane, this thing about resilience, because you touched on it, it's huge, isn't it?
It is. It's the leaders' own resilience, I think, and it's trying to support the resilience of the people they lead. So it's as Sophie was saying, you can't really do that unless you're looking after your own resilience.
Yeah. And so what have you noticed people have been doing, or I know I've picked up all sorts of things in the conversations I've had about people sort of adapting their working day, people doing things that they would never have dreamt of doing to help support their own well-being. But is there anything that you've picked up with the people that you're coaching?
Well, what I've been trying to encourage people to do, because quite often they don't know what to do in terms of they haven't found that solution. They're just end on meetings all day. I've encouraged them to look at alternatives, like not always be on Zoom, to actually, if they need to talk to people, to walk around outside with their mobile, if they absolutely have to and they can't have a complete break. to get out in the fresh air as much as possible, to put boundaries on their working day, and I've shared with them the sort of thing I do myself, which is meditation, for example.
Yeah. And Emma, how, some of the challenges that you've been talking about with Nicola, and obviously that they're confidential, but when you first started working with Nicola, were there one or two challenges that you raised with her that you wanted to focus on? Or was it just a question of help to get through what you're currently facing?
It was a bit of a mixture. So yes, certainly having a bit of guidance in terms of getting through the challenges that arose from the pandemic, particularly in a work environment. So one being so very much about adapting to the new way of working, because it was very, very different for us. And other challenge, and more focusing on the uncertainty of everything, and how not only do I navigate myself through working towards a future where it might be looks a little bit uncertain, but also being able to support the rest of my team and organisation in that transition as well.
Yeah. And how about you, Sophie? Because I know you've been having lengthy conversations with Britt, even though she's now in Saudi Arabia, you still seem to manage it. So what were the things that you wanted to focus on when we first started?
Yeah, so when we first started, I think last March, so just when things were kicking off with the pandemic, I wanted to talk about women in leadership roles, especially young women. So we've discussed that, dealing with people, and different management styles and techniques. And I think just we talk about situations that have happened and how maybe next time we could do them differently, and just generally how I can progress myself in my career.
Yeah. And something that I was on a conversation yesterday. I won't say with which organisation, but it was an organisation that has a really strong reputation for the way people work together. But there was a sort of challenge put out yesterday, and saying that the relationships are all wonderful, but actually one of the things that the pandemic has taught us is we need to listen to younger people. Although we think as older leaders we are being generous and compassionate and responsive, we still need to do even more about listening to younger people in our organization, because they've got different viewpoints and they've got things that we need to hear. What do you think as two young leaders, and I'm not asking you to refer to your own organizations, but what do you think generally are the challenges that you face as young leaders in an environment where most of the leadership is still, dare I say it, the age of the other three that are taking part on this conversation? And I count myself as the oldest. So, what are the challenges for you as young leaders generally? What do you think the issues are going forward? What do us older generations need to listen to you about?
Well, that's a bit of a tricky one. I don't mind going. That's a bit of a tricky one. I guess it's a really good... so one of my managers have said once that a really good way to think of team effort is no one has the monopoly on good ideas. So if there's someone within your organisation who has, or if there's someone you're working with who has good ideas, listen to them, no matter what department they work in, or what area they work in, or their age, or their experience. If it's a good idea, listen. And I think that, I think that's something we can all take on board, and it's not having that unconscious bias on someone, I suppose, when you see how old they are or what department they work in. It's actually just listen to what they're saying. If it's useful, work with them.
Yeah, okay, and that works both ways. I mean, that works all ways, is what you're saying. Yeah, okay. How about you, Sophie?
I think quite similar as well. I think you need a mix of both. You need young people, and then you need more experienced people. I know definitely for me, I can sometimes go to my manager with all these different ideas, and he could say, well, we've tried that, but actually second idea you've got really good, so let's give it a go. And his experience actually can guide. So I value that experience that he has, but he will listen then to my ideas as well.
I would also suggest as well for if you do have someone who's coming up with ideas, don't give them that fear of failure. Try and support them through that, and support them if it doesn't work, then let them know that's okay. I think you can easily fall into a culture where you feel like you're going to get told off if you get something wrong, and that's certainly something that shouldn't be there. You should feel like failure is okay, and you can learn from that as a team and not be on your own.
So can we ask? I mean, I'm looking at Britt and Jane, and I'm thinking, who's going to ask this first? So, what's one of the failures or one of the mistakes that you've made that you've learned from? Because you're right, all of us have made. Well, I know I have horrendous mistakes over the years, but if you're not learning from them, then they're not doing you a service. So, would you be brave enough to say something that you got horribly wrong, but you learned from it? No? Either of you, anything that you care to mention?
Is that to Britt and Jane or to me and Emma?
No, to you and Emma. Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry, I thought it was Britt and Jane.
No, go on. Any of us.
What have we failed on?
That can be fitted into this program, so we leave it with you.
Yeah. What's gone horribly wrong? Probably loads. I can't think of an example, because there's always little things that happen. I mean, but in terms of relating, actually, this relates to the example I used for one of the successes as part of our online program. The way I describe it, I'm still, when it comes to running programs online, I still have my L plates on. I'm not a novice with online stuff. I'm kind of learning as I go, and there have definitely been quite a few hiccups when trying to assist other people. I think one of the most difficult things is when you're running an online program, is being able to support others with accessing your online program, particularly when you can't be there to support them and see what everything looks like on their screen. And there have been moments where people just haven't been able to log on, only one or two, mind you. But certainly when you see that someone hasn't been able to access a program you're offering, and you know that it would be of great benefit or they would really enjoy it, it is a bit disheartening. So you're always learning as to how to improve that, which I think we're getting there now. We have done that. So that's just a little minor example of failure from my end.
I can appreciate that. I'll tell you my story in a moment. So Sophie, how about you?
I don't really know what to say for that, because I think in this environment everything moves so quickly. So if there is a mistake made, maybe you haven't packed the correct amount of order. Yeah. There is always a way you can go back and fix it, or you've already moved past it onto the next thing. So it's been dealt with. So I don't have a good answer for you on that one. I'm sorry.
It doesn't matter. It's just that all of us do learn so much from the mistakes we make, and mine is rather like yours, Emma. A few months ago, I was encouraged to throw myself into the world of technology and use every possible gizmo on one of these online sort of sessions. And we threw the works at it. You name it, every single piece of software went into it. Everyone got very excited. And the whole thing crashed. Not a single aspect of what we designed or created worked. Mm-hmm. And on reflection, we'd all got terribly cocky and arrogant about how clever we were going to be using the technology. And at the end of the day, it was, we learned that actually trying to keep things as simple as possible and trying to, as you've said, trying to make sure that people can literally access something, is really what it's about. And I know I felt absolutely awful for the rest of the day when that happened. But I've learned since. Well, I hope I've learned since. My colleagues will have to tell me. But yeah, we learn from our failures. So looking forward, then, what are the things? We've come through all of this, and certainly Britt, Jane, and I have had conversations with organisations who've said we're not going back to what it was. You know, we're moving into a new world of maybe flexible working, hybrid working. We're going to be using technology in a different way. We're going to be involving people in a different way. What do you feel, looking forward, are likely to be the exciting sort of new changes that are coming along that are going to impact you positively, both in the performing arts world and education, and also in fresh produce? What are the things that you think that we're going to take forward and develop?
Sorry, you can go.
I think more of a focus on maybe mental health will be taken forward.
Yeah.
Definitely in the fresh produce, obviously we're all used to working in a busy environment, but definitely during this time we have had to stop and say, are we well? Are we okay? Is there any adjustments we can make to make sure that we are all functioning as we should be, and that we're all happy and positive? So I think that is definitely something that we'll be looking at going forward.
And do you think there's anything in terms of the way your customers behave, or I mean, in the commercial world, whether there are going to be things that will be different in the future that have come about as a result of people's experiences recently?
I think they may start to do things more online. I know we've had more online audits because they've not been able to come and audit physically. So I don't know if they'll continue to do things like that and maybe do more remote working. But I'm not sure.
Yeah. And how about you, Emma?
I think moving forward, something we've already discussed at my work is certainly flexible working. We don't work in an industry where it's 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Our industry sort of runs every day throughout the day, and it's not always useful for us to be working during usual working hours. So having flexibility on that, but also having flexibility on where we're working as well. So although the building is based in Banbury, for some of us we're based either sort of towards Oxford or Bicester way, and actually being able to have that flexibility to either work at home or come and work in the building as and when you need to, we've realised it's helped us to be more productive, where you can have some quiet and some space, but also it's really useful. You know, when you're in the building, what you're there for, and you're there for, you know, meetings, or because we as a team, it's very, very often we get together to bounce off creative ideas. So that is better when you're together in the building, and when you're at home on Zoom, you just don't have that same rapport online. So that's something we're definitely going to focus on moving forward, is a way of being flexible to help us be more productive, I think.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know, Britt, Jane, you've got a comment. It mirrors everything I'm hearing with the clients that we're talking to.
Yes, it does, especially the flexibility around working from home and how the stigma around that seems to have disappeared, where before the pandemic, it used to be sort of the rule that unless you could show your face in the office many times per week or even per day, that was sort of a token of your productivity. Whereas now people are working from home, and we have seen that it can work. Although for some people it's been very challenging, mainly the ones that had little children around. But it can work. It can be productive, and it can also take away some of the stress of the commute. So I hope we're moving towards a much more hybrid and accepted way of where your workplace is and when.
I'd say as well, it's more environmentally friendly as well. We've certainly considered that, because we are all driving in. Actually, if we can free up parking spaces for contractors when they're going into the building, but also have less fuel emissions into the environment, and that's always a really positive thing as well.
Yeah, we've had lots of examples given of people say, you know, I've saved a 2.5-hour commute every day. It doesn't mean to say I spend that time working necessarily, but I've had lots of clients say, I've been able to take my children to school for the first time in 2 years, or I've been able to pick them up, or I've changed my days so I start work early, but maybe at lunchtime I do meet up and when we can, and I do something different. I know one senior executive who said to me, I've actually played tennis with a cousin who rang me up a few weeks ago and said, I'm going to be in the area, are you up for a game of tennis? I would never ever have been able to do that had I been in the office working, but I could adjust my day accordingly to fit that. And therefore, I felt much better in the afternoon, having taken that exercise, to carry on and doing the stressful job that they're doing. Yesterday, there was an interesting comment from someone from China that I was talking to, who said, well, we've all gone back to the office because in China, people don't have room in their homes to be able to work from home. It's just not that the rooms, the house is too small or the apartment is too small. So one of the key things was to get people back into the office so they could be more productive. It's interesting how it plays out differently in different parts of the world. Issues that we think are common in terms of the pandemic actually play out very differently when it comes to what we've learned and how we then adapt our lives accordingly.
Yes, and it's an interesting point about flexibility, I think, there, that it's a wonderful opportunity for leaders to show flexibility with the people they manage, because it's great when it works and people are using the time, for example, to take their kids to school, and that's okay. But for others, perhaps report that they are expected to be at their computer from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 at night or whatever, and instead of giving them that flexibility, it's made them feel like prisoners in front of their screen. So there's a great sort of opportunity for leaders, I think, to show their trust in people and to give them that gift of allowing them to use their time how they want.
Yeah. And Sophie, I know you and I had conversations when you were at MDS, and I was saying how pressurized fresh produce is, in that you're dealing with something that very quickly gets past its sell-by date. You have very demanding customers. And I know when I first joined the fresh produce industry, it really was high pressure and long hours and people striding around the place doing stuff and being terribly sort of enthused by getting lorry loads of this, that, and the other out the depots. Is it still like that, or is there a more sort of structured? But you mentioned mental well-being. Is there a more structured approach now in your experience?
I think from my experience, definitely at 5. So it's busy during the day, but I start at 6 and finish at 3, and that is when we finish, because obviously we have times by which we have to get the orders to the depots. So once the lorries have gone, then it's fine, and then we can relax. But definitely we do have structure, and I wouldn't say it was highly pressured. I'd say it was busy, but manageable.
Yeah, and it is 7 days a week, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. And so when you finish at 3, there are other people still continuing because they're on different working hours or different shifts, or does everything finish at 3?
No, everything. Well, transport's open till 5, but production finishes at 3.
Yeah.
And then we all go home.
Yeah. Great. So I think it's been really interesting to catch up with you. So thank you for giving up your time and joining us. And it's lovely to see you both. Could I just finish by asking whether what is perhaps one of the benefits you've had from being able to have conversations on a regular basis with either with Britt or with Nicola? Again, not talking about the confidential stuff, but how has it helped you?
For me, it's been the reflection. So I can explain something to Britt, and then we can reflect, and Britt can give me her opinions or her experiences, and she can give it to me from a different angle, which I then can think about afterwards. So I think that's been really beneficial to me. And it's also nice to have someone, I think, to speak to if something has gone on. Yeah. Britt's hopefully on my side, so I can explain it to her, and she doesn't judge. Or, she might say, yeah, okay, well, next time we'll do it like this. So that's been really nice.
Great. And Emma?
I was going to say exactly the same thing. It's the reflection. It's being able to talk something through with someone and actually having a different point of view on something, and helping you to think how you move forward with certain things. That's probably been the most positive thing taken from the coaching session so far.
Wonderful. Well, before we wrap up, and we'll stay on the line for a little bit when the recording finishes, I just wanted to first of all thank you for joining, because I know both of you are in work. Obviously, Sophie, you're calling in from work and you're on shift at the moment, and Emma, I know you've had a very busy time of it recently. So thanks for joining. And just to say, for the next 2 weeks, we're going to be changing the time of this because we have friends of ours joining us from the United States. So next week, the 21st, we'll be going out at, I think it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because Marsha Hughes-Reese, who's one of our friends from Virginia in the United States, is joining us. And the following week, we've got Rick Mora joining us, who's going to be sharing his latest book with us and having a chat. And then in June, which is wonderful, we've got another American joining us, and he's a colleague from an organization called Frost Included, which is a huge diversity and inclusion consultancy set up by Stephen Frost. And Rafi is going to be joining us from the United States. That's in June. So we're truly going international with all of this. But for the next few weeks, it will probably be a little bit later in the day UK time, which will mean in India it's going to be a lot later. But no apologies for that. We need to move things around. Anyway, it's lovely to see you all. Britt, Jane, thanks for joining us. And everyone take care. And Sophie and Emma, good luck with everything going forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.